So this is our first Sunday of October, which means we have a whole new theme. So the theme for the year is 100 Years of Science of Mind. So you just stop and think, 1918. That's something? That's how long that this tradition has been out and about and expanding people's consciousness. The month of October, we get to look at prosperity and abundance. And each week we have different themes. Today's theme is God's bounty. When I hear that word bounty, it's one of those words we don't talk about. It's just kind of brings me back to the agricultural era and the harvest and living to the seasons and the sun up, sun down, the simpler way of life. And yet, was it? It begs the question of where were we when we celebrated harvest, when we were an agricultural world? And where are we now in this whole computer-generated world? A lot of people in today's world would say we want those simpler times when there was disease, death, famine, injustices. Women did not have nearly the rights that we do now. So we look at where we are today and say, where is God's bounty really about? And sure, it can be looked at as a harvest. The ups and the downs, the staying in with the flow of life. We've been hearing a little bit of political themes going on today, haven't we? From the meditation this morning to the music. That's part of where we are today, too. And what we look at in the CSO world is not being critical of what we see in our political arena, but taking the knowledge and the possession of our thoughts, being a choice. What do I want? This over here, back in the days when we did live just strictly by the ebb and flow of the world, changed. We have a bigger consciousness now. We can dream of space travel, of electronic communications that is instantaneous. Somebody had a gift, a treasure within themselves that they expanded to create the world that we live in today. And it wasn't done from destroying other people's thoughts or ideas or values. It was about going bigger. Let's vote. Let's do what we want to do. Let's take control of our lives. Let's put love into the world, because that's who we are. We as truth seekers, those who know where it is to have an expansive mind that encompasses everyone. We're like that one candle that if you take another candle and light it from the one, are you adding light or taking away light? This one candle hasn't given up anything when another candle came to take its light. We just expanded it. These are the light seekers of the world. This is who we are as light seekers of the world. This is the bounty that we have available in us right now that lets us reach out to the entire world that we live in and make a difference. Vance was talking about the highest potential. What's his purpose? That's one of the big questions that many of us ask. How can I make a difference? I know that there's something in me that is crying to be out in this world and to know that I've left a legacy. Many of you know my husband. He's a builder. You look around this room and there's not a thing he hasn't created, from the altar to the coffee cup holder. He has left his legacy in building. It's what he does. It's his bounty, his gifts, his treasures that he is sharing with the community. And each and every one of us has our own treasure that we share. There's something inside of us that is just yearning for more. There's a concept that the Greeks have called the entelechy concept. This is the belief in the acorn is an oak tree. Now you look at this tiny little acorn in your hand and say, how can this little bitty seed be this great massive oak tree? But that's where it starts, isn't it? And each and every one of us has within us the highest potential. The oak tree of us that is manifest maybe right now just as an acorn, but can grow. With the right watering, the right sunlight, the right care and attention, our entelechy, our highest potential, can come forward. Jean Houston wrote a book called The Wizard of Us. And she took the characters of the Wizard of Oz and looked at them in a metaphysical light. And she looked at Glinda, the good witch, as being the entelechy of Dorothy. So this is how it operates within our lives. Dorothy was just fraught with all types of insecurities and not knowing what's going on, except for the fact of going home. Where exactly was home? And when she finally got to the end of her journeys, Glinda comes back and says, what have you learned? That's that highest potential in us. Doesn't judge what's going on. It says, where's my lesson? What have I learned? Michael Beckwith did a talk just recently up in Santa Rosa that I went up to see. And one of the things that he had talked about was this way of looking at life as lessons. He did a statement that just stayed in my memory. A bad day for the ego. When I'm pushed and my buttons are triggered and I'm upset over here and I want to take vengeance over there, a bad day for my ego is a good day for my soul. Because that's when I have that opportunity to grow, to be more, to experience my fullest potential, to really look at God's bounty as it pertains to me. I'm not out there sunrise to sunset, plowing fields and bringing in the harvest. Or am I? There's a lot of different ways to look at that harvest, isn't it? Ernest Holmes, as our founder, has talked about the right way to use the law. And the law is that concept that when we put something into our mind, it then comes into this fertile ground that then materializes into form. So he says, if a man takes his images of thought, let me reverse that. There is a whole thing going on about degenderizing Ernest Holmes' writings. Back in the 1900s, everything was written in the male tense. There's actually some efforts going on in Home Office to rewrite every single thing that Ernest has written into a non-gender form. So, yeah, it's a very big effort. So if a person takes their thoughts, their images of thoughts, only from previous experiences, then the person continues in bondage with the previous experiences. Jesus understood these great laws of cause and effect in the universe, which work sometimes with apparent slowness, but always with sureness. Eventually, we'll all understand that human bondage is an invention of ignorance. Supply doesn't change. What was existing in the agricultural world and what is existing now in the computer world, it's the same source. It's being open to it, being aware of it, having the knowledge. It's ignorance that causes the difficulties that some of us experience in our lives. Supply is always there. Supply is always there. The entelechy, our highest potential, is always there. You look at anybody in this world that you admire, you can be them. You can be them. Nothing is stopping any of us except our ability to open to source. open to our own divine magnificence. Because that's who we are. We are divinely magnificent. We can do absolutely anything that we choose to do. Comes back to choice. Do I want to open myself that much? Am I willing to take success? Am I willing to risk failure? Another thing Michael Beckwith was talking about was on those two sides, success and failure, most of us choose mediocrity. If we choose success, there is a potential that we create envy and jealousy in our circle, in our community. Most people don't want to have that experience. If we end up failing, we can often be ridiculed or mocked for the lack of success, for the failure that we had. So not consciously, this is one of those things back from that past experience. You got to get along. You got to make waves. You got to do what everyone else does. We settle for conformity, mediocrity. There is actually a word in the Swedish language called lagom, which means not too much, not too little. They actually have a culture that is a middle-of-the-road culture. As some of you know, I work quite a bit with the Swedish company, and when I would go over there to do different meetings and try to get a decision out of some big things going on in life, it was always very difficult because of this middle-of-the-road value system. And I was talking to one of my Swedish friends, and I said, what is this? I don't quite get what's going on. And he goes, oh, Kathy, you want a decision from the Swedes? Anybody who could make a decision has already immigrated to America. Give it up. It was very cute. And of course, only a Swede could talk about the Swedes that way, right? But it's our lives. And many of us, we settle for conformity. It's how we were brought up. I'm a middle child. It was like, you don't want to get my older sister upset who's a rebel, and I got to take care of my younger brother because that's what any older siblings do. They take care of the younger ones. And those lessons from my past carry over into today. And I look at some of these things. My brother's 50 years old. Does he need me to take care of him? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because he's got the same past experience. If I mess up, my older sister's going to take care of me. Well, do I want that? And it becomes back to choice. And this is something that we all can do that is related to that God's bounty. What are my choices? What is mine to do? What gifts do I have? And are these gifts something that I can serve myself as self-care best by not serving others? Sometimes. Those are hard things to look at, hard lessons to understand. This God's bounty is living fully, not hiding your light under a barrel. And sometimes that means self-care only, because we're all out there. And to bring it back and be my fullest potential and to understand what that is means taking time for me. The whole message of hiding your light under a barrel was actually, I'm sure most of you know, this is a Bible phrase. But the story behind it, there's a gentleman by the name of Lamza who lived in an Armenian village and decided to take the Bible as it was written into the everyday life that would have been happening 2,500 years ago. Since Jesus taught in parables, what does it mean to everyday life? It's the equivalent if somebody had said, so, Romeo, Juliet, immediately you go to romance. Immediately. Star-crossed lovers, we know the story. What if we didn't know the story? What would Romeo and Juliet mean? A couple names. What, are they your neighbors? Who are these people? So he took it upon himself to put meaning into some of these parables. And hiding your light under a bushel basket actually came from 2,500 years ago. Families would have large rooms, not a house, but a room, auditorium-sized room. And you might have the grandparents over on the right side, and the aunt and uncle on the left side, and you've got a couple cousins living over here, and maybe the newlyweds are right in the middle because they don't have enough seniority to get the corners. And if families go, sometimes you have disagreements. Well, when you do, and you're having something as precious as lamp oil to light your little family area, is it casting a light on the other people too? Yeah, it is. And if you don't want them to benefit from your lamp, from your oil, from your hard-earned money, you put your light under a basket. Now, what did that do to my family unit too? I was dim, dark, but my other people, those ones I didn't like, they weren't getting any of this light. No way. So I'm hiding my light under a basket. And while it certainly meets the need of not letting these people I'm angry with get any of my treasures, any of my bounty, it hurts me too. It hurts me too. And nothing has changed in 2,500 years. When we hold back who we really are, when we opt for conformity, mediocrity, because we're worried about the perception of others, we're hurting ourselves. We're hurting ourselves. How can I be everything that I was born to be? How can I achieve my fullest potential when I step back because someone might judge me? And they might. And they might. And they might not. They might admire and respect me. Doesn't matter. Either side of that is a judgment. Am I doing it because I want accolades? Sometimes, yes. I like applause. I like standing ovations. And let me shine here. But that's not why any of us needs to be motivated to do something. We do something because it's the right thing to do. And we know at some level, whether anybody sees it, anybody knows it, anybody says anything about it, it's the right thing to do. My husband, John, is just so good at that. All these things that I was talking about, nobody asked him to do it. He just saw the need and did it. And even when somebody says, wow, this is a great thing you did, nah. He doesn't do it for the accolades. And my thought, well, then why do it, honey? That's the difference in him. And he's a very, very wise person. And he knew that the need was there. That's his highest potential. What can I do that will add value to my community? What is my bounty that I can share? And he's found it in building, in creating. For us to live that highest potential means we have to sometimes let go of past limitations. And that's the hard part. Because we do have our past who has made us who we are. And how can we let go of who we are? It comes down to deciding you want to be different. Years ago, I was working at a company. I just got started at the company, and we went out to lunch, and as you do when you first get started with the company, and people are sharing their different stories. And this one gentleman is sharing a very, very painful story about his divorce. And I'm new. I don't know him very well. So, and we all come back from lunch, and later on in the afternoon, I just stopped by his desk, and I was filled with compassion about, oh, this poor guy. This divorce sounded so hard. And I asked him, how long ago, have you been divorced? And he's quiet, and he just kind of looked up at me. About 20 years. 20 years holding on to a painful story that to me just evoked all of my sympathy and compassion, but it was 20 years. Like, put that luggage down. We don't need to carry that baggage with us. It's back to being a choice. There's another quote that Ernest was talking about too, that was about the whole choices as well as the things that happen in our lives that we so often blame others, put judgment into it, call it bad, evil. When Jesus talked about turning the other cheek, Ernest writes in Science of Mind, when Jesus said resist not, he meant non-recognition of evil is the way to avoid it. This is true recognition of evil is the only way that we can remove it is by knowing that it is not our reality. This is true according to the law of cause and effect. For what we persist in recognizing, we persist in holding in place. That which we refuse to recognize, we neutralize, and it is no longer there as far as we are concerned. Science of Mind, page 303. Very apt for today's world, isn't it? And it's not to deny it. It's not to say, oh, no, la, 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 rainbows and unicorns, it's just a wonderful, beautiful life. It's not putting energy where we don't want it to be. Bring the energy inside. Look at your own self and your own potential, your own uniform destiny. What is the acorn in you that wants to grow to be that oak tree? I invite you this coming week to take a chance. Take a step that you haven't done before, that you've let your past say, I can't possibly do that. Give it a try. Give it a try. See where your entelechy takes you. What does Glinda the Good Witch have to tell you as the Dorothy image? And live that life. Be that light. Be the candle that shares your gifts, your bounty, your light to bring more into this world. Let us pray. Divine Spirit, the one mind, the one thought, the one beauty that exists in this world, the constant source that can never be taken away. This is who I am and who every single person in this room and in this world is. Limitless possibility, complete potentiality, divine magnificence. I choose today to let that divine magnificence shine through me, to be the candle that others can light their candles from, to expand the light from one to another, bringing about a change in consciousness to our world that starts with me as an individual. This is my truth, and this is the truth of each and every person, whether they know it or not. I rejoice in the ability to make a difference in this world by the way I think, by the way I do, by the way I am. Who I am makes a difference. As I open my heart to the gratitude of knowing these truths for myself, I let go. I let God. I release these words to the law that knows only what is put into it. I put good. into the law and see it manifest in form in the world that I live in. I invite each and every person here to help me anchor these words by together saying, and so it is.